Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week we feature a new gallery Café in London that will serve as a cultural hub to promote queer and gay fine art photography. Plus we talk about the art of wildlife photography as we speak with some of the winners of this year's Wildlife Photography of the Year. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And today's show will be a little bit of a photography special. We start the show welcoming back to the show Ghislain Pascal to the studio. He's the co-founder of London's The Little Black Gallery. He also started their program Boys, Boys, Boys in 2018, which included a biannual magazine that was featured here on the show before, exhibitions, and now the very first Boys, Boys, Boys Gallery Café in London's Fitzrovia. I visited the beautiful space with walnut-paneled walls, pink onyx marble bar and tabletops, and of course, beautiful photography too. Here is Gil to tell me more about it.
So we've decided to expand our Boys, Boys, Boys brand. So not just the magazines, the books, the zines, the artworks. I've decided now to open a gallery. The first Boys, Boys, Boys Gallery Café anywhere in the world, in London. First one, so hopefully lots more to come. And the concept is that it's somewhere, a safe space for queer people to come, to enjoy the art. So there's exhibitions, there's photographs, and to pick up our magazines, the books, the zines, the candles, and have a cup of coffee or have a glass of wine. So we've launched our own Boys, Boys, Boys wine, red, white, pink and sparkling, and our own coffee. So it's just a really nice, chilled space. And I think it's going to become a really good destination. I think it's going to give Monocle Cafe a run for its money.
Absolutely. And I was there, by the way, the sparkling was lovely.
Thank you.
So it's excellent that actually it's also branded. It's from Boys, Boys, Boys.
It's from my neighbour in France where I live. So it's all local to me, apart from the rosé, which is from Provence. But no, to get back to the original concept, we've been doing Boys, Boys, Boys now for 5 or 6 years. And we've been doing exhibitions around the world. I just feel that the gallery spaces have become in such boring, tired, uninviting, intimidating spaces to visit that people don't want to visit them anymore. I mean, I had a gallery in Chelsea in London for 10 years and I know how hard it is. So this new concept is trying to create a space it's fun to come to. You don't want to just come like every, 6 months. You want to come every week. And we've employed such a great team of staff. So the staff are really crucial to this project. So they're front of house. That's their role. Their job is to chat and to talk to you and to give you a coffee or wine and to talk to you about the art and the magazines and books, not just sit behind a computer screen. Like, normally when you walk into a gallery,
it's so
the
cold
receptionist
and chilly.
And they're sitting behind their computers tapping away. They look you up and down, and then they go back to their computer. It's like, oh, what's that all about? So the plan is, Fernando, we want them in every city of the world.
And there's no better way, in my opinion, when you have a physical space to connect with your reader, a potential buyer as well of art, or someone who just wants to enjoy a cup of coffee, but also looking at some beautiful art on the walls as well, right?
And also the magazines and the books. As you know, the magazine, I've been here before the Stack, and every time I say I can't quite believe the success of the magazine. I mean, it really has exploded. I mean, it just keeps on growing. And when I go to, I get messages every day from friends who are like, oh, we're in New York, we just saw it, we're in LA, we're in Manila. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can get a copy of Boys, Boys, Boys. It's really quite extraordinarily global. So the Gallery Cafe is a kind of a natural extension. I mean, it's going to bankrupt me, but, I think this might be my legacy. It's my last hurrah. I don't think I've got anything else left in me. But it's, we've put a lot of investment into it. It's not, it looks and it feels nice. It's luxury.
It is luxury from the color of the walls, which is kind of some light pink. I mean, you might describe it better.
Light pink with walnut panelled walls, pink marble tops, Italian white mosaic floors. It's chic-y. It's really nice. We had an amazing team working on it. But I just feel that, it doesn't matter whether it's somebody that's, an art student that comes in. We want people to feel involved in queering gay photography. And, I actually think, I don't know this, but I think we are the first fine art photography gallery anywhere in the world specializing just in queer and gay photography.
And there's so many interesting stories from the brand. Of course, even if you're not a reader, maybe you go to the cafe and say, oh, look, who is this picture by? And you have photographers from so many countries and countries that you wouldn't imagine, you know, from Iran to Russia to Kenya as well. I think that's quite an interesting message to talk about.
Well, you know, that's been a passion of mine for the magazine. It's like we get, you know, occasionally I get comments going, oh, why don't you be diverse? I'm like, okay, back up. I'm like, how diverse can we be? We have photographers from 33 countries. And since I last saw you, we've now got our first African photographer because we launched a scholarship to find an African photographer. It was becoming quite difficult to find an African photographer, but we launched the scholarship last year and we found an amazing guy called Turkan from Kenya, and he's superb and he's in the magazine. And it just gives people, the magazine just gives people a platform to show their photography. So in the current issue, we've got these Indian photographers. They are so happy to be published in the magazine. They've created such a huge body of work in India. None of it has ever been published in India because of the issues around gay rights. So for them just to be published in the magazine, they're just so happy. And that's what we want. And obviously we want them people to buy the art. And as it turns out, one of my clients in America then bought some of their art. So they were just so happy. And that's what gives me, you know, that's what makes me happy, that we can give people a platform to express themselves. And in terms of the space, one of the really important things is we want it to be a cultural hub. So we've launched this program called Boys, Boys, Boys Meets. Every Wednesday night, we invite somebody from the queer and gay community to come and talk to us in an intimate setting, only 20 people, to talk about their lives, about their careers. We might have to invite you. So we've got, we've got Mariana Vivanco, who's a very well-known Peruvian fashion photographer. We've got my friend Ben Spriggs, who's the editor of Elle Decoration.
Former guest here on the Stack as well.
Of course. And then, you know, just anybody. We've got William Martin, who's a queer ceramicist. And I just want it to become somewhere, you know, when I was doing a lot of the tours for the magazine, to promote the magazine, people always used to come up to me, you know, younger people saying, oh, we just love coming to your events because it's somewhere we can talk to other people about, you know, the arts, about what we're doing. And there's not that many spaces in London or any city that you can go out and be queer or gay and meet people, like-minded people, but talk about the arts.
When it comes to queer and gay photography, do you think there's still prejudice, even in a city like London? Of course, it's easy to talk, you know, Iran and other countries, Kenya, but even perhaps here, what would you say?
Well, look, last time I was on the Stack, I said exactly the same thing. It's absolutely profound. And people don't understand it. Straight people don't understand it because obviously they've got queer and gay friends or they've got kids that are queer or gay. But the homophobia, the institutional homophobia that exists, even in somewhere like London, is absolutely extreme. You know, we as a brand cannot get any publicity. Monocle is the only person that has constantly supported us as a brand. Nobody else, any kind of mainstream media, never covers what we do. And I told you before, what I do with my main gallery, the Little Back Gallery, we can get publicity anywhere. But when it comes to Boys, 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 nothing.
Well, but you are part of the change. I mean, you're doing actually something about it, right?
No, but
you're opening a space.
But it's really upsetting. And what I'm saying is that people, when I talk to my, you know, straight friends, they simply don't understand the barriers that exist. And that's just me. I don't care. But talk about, you know, think about everybody else that's trying to do things within our environment who is queer or gay. The barriers they're constantly pushing. It's hard. And then, you know, then you think about people who live in countries that are really not nice, you know, nasty countries. It's not nice.
Well, very, very good point from you there. And Gil, I want to ask, what about, you know, the magazine that we all love? So which issue is out at the moment?
8.
What's coming up?
We're on 8. Well, Fernando, this is the tricky question. 9 comes out in January.
Wow.
10 in June. What do we do after 10? I think we're going to have a rebrand.
Okay.
I might have to get some advice from the Monocle team.
Please.
Because you've been doing it so long. I think we'll have to change after 10. But we've now do the zines, so don't
change too much.
No, don't change too much. But I think it's nice to the next 10 will look slightly different. Maybe I need to talk to my amazing designer Jeremy Kunz, who does the magazine.
And if people want to visit, it's actually open like every day.
We're open Tuesday to Sunday.
Wow.
So Tuesday to Saturday, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m, Sunday 2 to 6.
And the location, does it mean something to you? Because I think you did mention that you used to live around the area a few years ago.
Well, randomly, a long time ago.
A few years ago.
We're not going to mention any ages. When I was a student, my student digs was in Fitzrovia. But actually, where we are on Warren Street, so it's in Fitzrovia, which is a very kind of, it's a very kind of shishy area now. It didn't used to be like that. But for me, my friend who has a gallery, Rebecca Hossack Gallery, who lives next door to us, and she has a gallery just off Fitzroy Square, she found the space. And once we looked at it, I realised location-wise, it's so easy to get to because it's got Great Portland Street, tube stations, Warren Street, Regent's Park, Tottenham Court Road, Goose Street, King's Cross, Soho. It's actually really easy to get to. And that's the thing with London. Like when we were in Chelsea with the Little Back Gallery, you would never get anybody coming from East London. It was just too far. So I'm hoping. It's not a huge space, but it's cute.
Thank you very much, Gil Pascal there. And Boys Gallery Café is open now in London. For more information, go to their Instagram page, Boys Gallery Café, London. And now let's talk wildlife photography. Every year I am amazed at the London Natural History Museum exhibition, Wildlife Photographer of the Year. The winning images were selected from a record-breaking 59,228 entries from 117 countries and territories. The exhibition is celebrating its 60th edition this year. It was a pleasure to speak with two of the winning photographers. We start now with Britta Jaczynski, winner of the photojournalism category.
To be honest, I've never done anything else but photography. I became a photographer very young. I'm from Germany. And there I did an apprenticeship after my A-levels and then went to study in the UK and only ever have done photography in my life, basically. So, it's kind of often people come to photography quite late, in their career, or they've done lots of other things and I simply haven't. For me, it was really important. I don't really see myself as a wildlife photographer. I see myself as a wildlife photojournalist because I don't take sort of beautiful pictures of nature, to celebrate the environment or something. I just really look at the dark side of what people do, the impact humans have on nature and wildlife, really.
And it's interesting because you're right. I think when people sometimes think about wildlife photography, it's a beautiful lion in the savannas of Africa, but your pictures, they can be quite harrowing. But at the same time, you have such an important role because I think thanks to the work that you do as well, sometimes even legislation in countries can change when it comes to wildlife crime, right?
Yeah, this is exactly why I'm doing this work, really. I would also, sometimes I really think to myself, why am I doing this to myself? Because it's tough, it's disturbing. I document really, really deeply unsettling situations, basically. And of course, sometimes I feel a bit down about it, feel a bit depressed about it. It's actually quite lonely because you can't really do these kind of jobs with people. You travel on your own and I have been working undercover in certain situations, which wasn't very pleasant and scary. But once I know that all of that exists, I can't really turn away from it. I feel that obviously there are a lot of really excellent wildlife photographers out there and I admire them and I love the work, but I very much see my job as the person who's basically showing the world all the crimes behind wildlife, the high demand, the ruthlessness between the wildlife trade. And that's not only actually the illegal wildlife trade, it's also the ruthlessness of the legal wildlife trade. In fact, my career started a bit like this, sort of looking at zoos, for example, because I always, deep in my heart, felt it wasn't right to take animals from the wild and put them into captivity sort of for our entertainment. Of course, there's now, I think the job of a zoo has very much changed and people now looking at, conservation much more and education much more than it used to be. But so what I really feel very much is that if there's no people out there to really go behind the scenes, wherever that might be, then the world will not know what the illegal wildlife trade or the legal wildlife trade actually looks like, So it needs to be done. And because I know all of this is going on, I can't turn away from it.
And one thing about your images is they will cause a reaction. So let's talk about the winning photography at the Wildlife Photography of the Year exhibition. Of course, you won in the photojournalism category. And the picture is someone is dusting, an elephant tusk to find evidence for a crime that have happened. That picture, it's beautiful. And I think we were discussing before the interview, because even behind, and I think that was not on purpose from your side, you can see some sort of fur coats or, there's so many elements to the image. So tell us about the image. How was it to shoot this specific one and where was it?
Okay, so let me take you back. Like a year ago, we actually decided to publish another book. So in the pandemic, I dreamt up a new project, a new book, not necessarily with the same photographers. Some were the same, some were others. And that book was supposed to explain the connection between biodiversity loss, the illegal wildlife trade, and global pandemics. Our consumption, our everyday consumption from everybody across the planet, what do we have to do with creating these pandemics causing biodiversity loss? The book, again, was a big success. So that was brilliant. But when the book was published, I think it was, The Guardian did a piece about it. And the head picture was actually of a fingerprint on ivory, which it was a photo I'd taken in Germany. But to be honest, there, the technique, we didn't really use it very efficiently. But the photo, nevertheless, was still quite nice. It wasn't anywhere near as good as the one you now see in the exhibition and the competition. But it was still on the top of this article. And a day later, I get an email from somebody saying, oh, hi, I work for the Metropolitan Police in London. And my colleague just told me that this photo was published. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm the forensic crime expert who developed this technique. So I usually work, and he explained himself, he said, usually I'm a forensic photographer for the Metropolitan Police. And in my own time, I developed this fingerprinting technique because ivory and lots of wildlife items are porous. So the sort of finger sweat sinks into the ivory and you can't actually lift any fingerprints off it. His name is Mark Mosley. He worked in his own time developing this new technique, and it's a different powder. And so basically, he said, hey, I'm here if you ever wanted to do a shoot with me, because I'm actually the one who invented this. And we're like, hey, cool. Thanks for getting in contact. But then, time passed a bit. A few months passed. Then suddenly I had a message from Border Force. So I worked with CITES Border Force team in Heathrow Airport. I've done several photo shoots with them. I covered a little bit of their work when they did Operation Thunder in 2022, which is a month of confiscating items, where they really very, very thoroughly look and confiscate and, hopefully do some arrests as well. Anyway, so they contacted me saying like, hey, we actually confiscated some ivory. Do you want to have a look at it? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, can we get maybe Mark Mosley to take fingerprints of this ivory? And anyway, so this is how it happened. And he said, yeah, I'm supposed to go down there anyway. And then we just met there. And we were put into this room, and it's a really difficult situation, I wasn't really, strictly speaking, supposed to be there. Nobody's allowed to come into these rooms. And as you can see from what he's wearing, it's a very delicate situation because, you're not supposed to touch anything. I felt a bit like I wasn't even allowed to breathe, to be honest. Felt really special that I was allowed to go behind the scenes there. And then I come into this room, he was already sitting there, and he started working, and I looked at the fur in the back thinking, this is perfect. And I shuffled things around a bit, like in terms of my angle. And I said to him, can you maybe look this way and this way? And I was trying to get the whole task in. That wasn't so easy. But anyway, eventually I felt, okay, this is good. And it was only, as I said afterwards, that I thought, oh, why didn't I move the fur coats around a bit? And I think I could have actually, in hindsight, I'm thinking I could have done a better job. But, even with that crate, I could have cleaned it a bit from the inside and maybe slightly different angle. But, this is the story of my life, of every photographer. You always afterwards think, if I could have done that. However, it's kind of a perfect shot, if I may say so myself. A lot of people, of course. I had a response. The very few people I showed this photo after the shoot, including, of course, the CITES Border Force team. They all were going, oh my God, this is amazing. And the light. Oh yeah, the light, what happened is actually the ambient light. And it's strobe light. It's not very nice. But because I didn't like the light so much, I kind of made sure that my shutter was sort of down to make it a bit darker. And then I had a torch on me. And I just pulled it out of my bag and went bong. And I just put the torch on the ivory. And I said to Mark, is this okay? And he said, actually, that's really helpful.
It's helpful for his job as well.
So this is really how it happened. But anyway, the amazing thing also was that I never showed this photo to Mark, and he didn't know till the day I won the award. So yeah, on the awards night, it was so beautiful to suddenly go like, yes, here it is. And of course, it's a really strong message, the message is there's still big demand on ivory. And then the other message is also, sadly, I have to tell you that the people, because of the fingerprints, there's a data bank created by United Nations, and you can actually get access to it. If you have a good reason, you can get access to this data bank of fingerprints. And then, of course, what gets revealed often is that the people who are trading ivory are the same people who are doing, other stuff like drugs, money laundering, weapons, So there's like, it's mafia, basically, it's like big global gangs. And so the idea, of course, is lifting the fingerprint the idea is that you then identify who it belongs to. And, hopefully, eventually, we will be able to disrupt or maybe even dismantle entire trade chains.
Thank you very much, Britta, for all the work you do. And for more information on Britta's incredible work, go to her Instagram page on britta.jaczynski.photography. And now we head to Australia to speak with Matty Smith, winner in the underwater category. He tells me more about his beautiful picture of a curious leopard seal beneath the Antarctic ice.
I've been shooting the ocean, let's say, because I'm an underwater photographer predominantly. So I've been shooting the ocean since kind of the mid-90s, really. So when I used to live in the UK, I immigrated to Australia in 2007, but I'm born and bred in the UK. And I started surfing the northeast coast of England and down in Cornwall and things like that in my teens. And with that, I started photography too, because I used to love documenting the beaches and the waves that me and my friends were going to surf at. So I've been shooting the ocean since then. But when I emigrated to Australia in 2007, all this wonderful new sort of ocean wildlife started presenting itself to me while I was in the water shooting surf. And then I started getting more distracted by dolphins going by and whatnot than I was the surfers I was trying to shoot. And then my style organically kind of started to change into a more of a wildlife photographer than a wave and surf photographer around sort of 2010. So I've been shooting for quite a long time, but in the ocean as a wildlife photographer, probably about 12 to 14 years.
And to be an underwater photographer, you must learn a different set of techniques, I presume, right?
Yeah, if you've got that extra level of, all photography is difficult to do well. So, but also going into a strange environment such as the ocean, you've got a few extra things that you've got to consider. First and foremost is obviously your own safety as well, especially when dealing with quite large predatory wildlife, and also you've got the ocean, currents and weather, and if you're on scuba, you've got to kind of be monitoring your air and your sort of kind of life support essentially, as well as all this task loading of trying to make a beautiful photograph as well. So it does get quite exhausting and complicated. Yes, there is a extra element, I guess, for the underwater or the nature guys, I suppose. Yeah.
A bit of a silly question, but you are based in Australia. Aren't you a little bit scared because you're talking about the safety? Of course, I'm thinking here of sharks, or you also learn techniques as well to actually protect yourself while you're doing the shoots.
That's right. Yeah. It helps an awful lot to understand the behavior of the animals you're shooting or the animals you might encounter. It's a common question that I do get asked a lot about if I'm worried about sharks. And generally the answer to that is no, because most sharks actually, when you're underwater, are quite hard to get close to. And we're sort of I'm striving to try and make photographs of these animals quite regularly, and you often kind of have to consider yourself fairly lucky to be able to get close enough to these animals to take the photographs. Obviously the first and foremost dangerous shark over here that everyone thinks about is the great white, which of course is a formidable animal and something that you have to have an awful lot of respect around. And if you're sort of suspecting that they might be in the area, then obviously you take extra levels of caution, such as, not staying on the surface of the ocean too long, because that's where you're kind of most vulnerable, and only diving at certain times of day, avoiding river mouths or places where you leave yourself open to vulnerability to these sort of things. So it's always a calculated risk, but it's a very, very such a tiny, tiny risk, really, that you're going to run into any trouble with these things, that it's not, in my view, worth kind of spoiling the enjoyment or the potential to make great photographs over worrying about that stuff too much, as long as you're kind of careful and don't go out, with reckless abandon trying to photograph things, but, just keep it in the back of your mind. But generally, no, it's not something that me or a lot of people in my trade are too afraid of. So, and of course, I have seen sharks, normally in controlled environments when we've kind of set out to look for particular species of sharks. So you're fully aware and expecting things to happen, and you've got safety measures in place to prevent anything from going wrong.
And let's talk about your winning picture as well, which is a stunning picture. It's a leopard seal, I believe, at the Antarctic Peninsula. First of all, it must be quite nice, to be awarded, because I feel it's the Oscars of wildlife photography, right? The Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibition.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is the jewel in the crown for any wildlife photographer to be even considered in these awards, which is amazing. I mean, this year they received just shy of 60,000 entrants, and I've been entering myself this award for probably the last 12 years. Now, I've been lucky enough to get in once before back in 2014, and then this year. But just to be invited to London and be part of this awards is absolutely phenomenal. And to be a category winner is a kind of a pinch myself dream come true moment that I still don't quite believe yet. So it's a wonderful privilege to be involved in. A career highlight, definitely.
Tell me more about the picture, because for me, what makes it so stunning as well, first of all, it's incredibly elegant. It shows the seal, in such a beautiful figure, and the seal is looking directly to the camera. It's fantastic.
That's right. This photograph was taken down on the Antarctic Peninsula. So, a small group of photographers actually sailed there in a small sailing boat from South America. And we went over there with the specific intention to try and find leopard seals and feeding humpback whales. And we were successful with both. But this leopard seal itself was the first one I'd actually personally encountered in the water, and they are a huge animal. I mean, they grow up to sort of 12 feet in length and can weigh over 350 kilos. And this one itself was probably not as big as the biggest ones, but it was certainly probably over a couple of 100 kilos. It was a very big, formidable, and foreboding animal. So you got to kind of treat it with respect. So getting into the water with this thing was slightly nerve-wracking, but also, a dream come true. Something an animal I've always wanted to work with, and then for it to be so calm and photogenic and accepting of my presence. Because obviously, when you get into water with animals like this, you've got to be respectful. You can't just go charging over and start firing away, because you might upset the animal or distress the animal or make it start acting aggressively. So it was a very gentle approach, and the animal kind of accepted our, because there was a couple of us in the water, presence, and was curiously swimming around us and approaching us and allowing us to photograph it quite readily without any sort of confrontation or sort of feeling that we're stressing each other out in any way. So, and then for it to pose like that beautifully against the ice and just look straight into the camera lens, which happened for literally a split second, and I was lucky enough just to freeze that moment in time of that perfect symmetry as it looked into the lens, was mind-blowing. I just knew straight away when I took that frame that I had something very, very special. So we'd travelled a lot of miles to get there just for that one second of photograph. So I often describe the wildlife photography as a long chain of events that leads you just to being in the right place at the right time in the right moment, and that was definitely a very long chain of events to get to that split second moment.
And I'm sure it was freezing as well at the Antarctic Peninsula, right? I mean, it must be quite challenging in that way as well.
It is very cold, yeah. I think the water got down to about minus 1.8 degrees centigrade. So it was definitely a little bit below zero when I was in the water shooting that, which does limit your time that you can work in there. I can stand it for about 45 minutes before I get too cold and have to get out. And I feel I'm quite slightly built kind of guy, and I feel the cold. So I've got a lot of layers on and a big heavy dry suit and things like that. And even with all that gear, after about 45 minutes, you can't feel your fingers anymore and can't operate the camera anymore. So you're definitely on the clock as soon as you hit the water.
Super interesting. And Mattia, I'm very curious about the life as well of a wildlife photographer. Are you usually, commissioned by, a magazine, a media group, or sometimes you do the work and then you actually try to see whoever is interested? How does it work usually, especially perhaps in your career and in your life as well?
Kind of all of the above, really. Sometimes you get magazines that want you to go and shoot something specifically, or sometimes you make the work yourself and you go and shoot things and then you try and sell the pictures. But me, I kind of specialize a little bit in many different things, really. Like I do enjoy teaching underwater photography. So there's a lot of sort of enthusiastic and amateur underwater photographers that want to learn the trade and learn how to make beautiful pictures, not necessarily because they want to become professionals themselves, but because they just want that taste of adventure. So I do enjoy taking people to new places and then teaching them photographic techniques. So that's a big part of my photographic career. I'm also an engineer by trade, so I do like to design and build specific underwater camera equipment to do specific jobs. And I'll do that for myself and for other people as well, like the technical side of things I do really enjoy. So that's also something I'm quite heavily involved with, as well as, selling fine art prints of photographs and then also trying to get commissions and trying to, sell stories. So you have to have a very sort of multifaceted approach. You can't just, hope on making a career out of just taking photographs.
Thank you very much, Matty. And for more information on his work, go to mattysmithphoto.com. And if you want to buy tickets for the exhibition, go to the Natural History Museum website, nhm.ac.uk. It's always worth a visit. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Dewars. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fb@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.